My best friend and I both married into the Leo family, a wealthy business clan in the capital, which made a host of socialites and noble ladies green with envy. However, no one knew that the two brothers of the Leo family were in love with the same person, and I was merely a pretense. I died to save my best friend, but was reborn the night before the grand wedding. In order to fulfill the love in his heart, I decided to call off the engagement. I'll announce the cancellation of the engagement and set you free. I woke up from a chaotic nightmare, and for a moment, I couldn't tell what day or time it was. I remembered strolling on the street with my best friend, Yvonne. Suddenly, a fanatical stalker rushed out and pounced on Yvonne to confess his love. Yvonne shrieked and dodged, but the man, in a delirious state, brandished a sharp knife, mumbling about his so-called love. When the sharp blade lunged towards Yvonne, I pushed her away, and the blade pierced my body. Intense pain swept through my whole body. I went limp and was held in Yvonne's arms. Excessive blood loss made me dizzy. Before losing consciousness, Leo's face flashed across my mind. If I really died, would he feel a moment of sadness for me? Or would he finally feel relieved? Without me, his nominal wife, he could gaze more silently at the one he held dear in his heart. Vivian. Hold on. I've called an ambulance. Oh my God. You're bleeding so much. In the end, I fainted in Yvonne's arms and didn't make it until the ambulance arrived. When I opened my eyes, I found myself not in the hospital, but in my familiar room. After getting up in a daze, I picked up the mobile phone by the pillow. To my surprise, the time was the night before Yvonne and I were to marry the brothers of the Leo family. I had been reborn. Thinking of the grand wedding tomorrow, for the first time, I had the urge to call off the engagement. My family and Yvonne's family were family friends for generations. So Yvonne and I had been playing together since childhood and had a deep bond. When we grew up, Yvonne, with her delicate and glamorous looks, became a shining A-list actress, while I became a cellist in an orchestra. Half a year ago, Yvonne told me that she had fallen in love with Jason, the second young master of the Leo family. Her eyes sparkled when she talked about him. Vivian, there are two brothers in the Leo family, right? I want to marry Jason. And you marry Leo, okay? Then we can go from being best friends to sisters-in-law and continue to love each other. At that time, I just smiled it off. After all, the glamorous Yvonne could win the heart of the sec and young master of the Leo family. But an ordinary person like me could never catch Leo's eye. The Leo family was a wealthy and powerful business family in the capital. The two sons of the Leo family were outstanding, and countless socialites in the capital were eager to marry into the family. With Leo's conditions, he could choose any stunning beauty he wanted. But unexpectedly, after the love affair between Yvonne and Jason was rumored, the Leo family actually sent someone to negotiate the engagement with my family. I was both surprised and delighted at that time. And Yvonne was even more excited. On the day when Yvonne and I got married, the luxurious century-old wedding was the envy of everyone. I originally thought that I could embrace a happy and fulfilling married life. But I found that Leo had always been polite and distant towards me. I thought of many reasons. Maybe I wasn't delicate and beautiful enough, not gentle and considerate enough, or even couldn't help him solve his problems. But once when he was drunk, I heard him murmur Yvonne's name. The two prodigies of the Leo family were in love with the same person. Since they couldn't have her, it didn't matter who they married. In my previous life, I clung to someone I couldn't have. In this life, I didn't want to repeat such a life. I found Leo's contact information and sent him a voice message. I'll announce the cancellation of the engagement and set you free. Then I went downstairs to find my parents and told them that I wanted to call off the engagement with Leo. What's wrong, dear? Why do you want to cancel it? You were clearly looking forward to marrying him. Because I don't want to marry a man who has someone else in his heart. I'm sorry. My parents looked at each other after hearing my words. After a moment, my mother hugged me affectionately. Don't feel wronged, dear. If you don't want to marry, then don't. We'll talk to the elders of the Leo family. After talking with my parents, I returned to my room and found several missed calls on my phone, all from Leo. There was also a solitary message. Vivian, SSR. Answer the phone. After thinking for a while, instead of calling back immediately, I told Yvonne the news that I intended to call off the engagement. What? You're calling off the engagement? But that's Leo. Are you really willing? Yeah. I don't think he likes me. So I can't be your sister-in-law. I didn't tell her about Leo's feelings. After all, tomorrow was her wedding with Jason. And I didn't want to be a spoiler. Yvonne was quite melancholy on the phone. She nagged me for a long time and finally said that calling off the engagement was okay. But I had to be her bridesmaid. After all, you're my best friend. On the most important day of my life. I hope you can witness my happiness. Don't worry, Yvonne. I'll definitely be with you. The next morning, I didn't know how my parents had communicated with the elders of the Leo family. But when I woke up, they told me that the engagement had been cancelled. Looking at their bloodshot eyes and tired expressions, I was deeply touched and hugged them tightly. I knew that my parents' place was my safest haven, and they would always protect and support me. When I arrived at Yvonne's house, she was already putting on makeup. Vivian, this is the bridesmaid dress I had someone send over overnight. Try it on quickly. It was a light purple bridesmaid dress. And it fit me perfectly. Yvonne praised me a lot and then said, "Oh, by the way, the best man today is Leo. It's quite something that Jason thought of having his brother be his best man." Hearing Leo's name, my heart skipped a beat. And a faint bitterness welled up. I didn't call him back last night, probably out of an evasive mentality. I didn't know how to face him. This nervous feeling lasted until the wedding venue. I saw Leo in a suit. He was tall, with deep-set features and an introverted temperament. His eyes landed on me, and I subconsciously avoided his gaze. He strode towards me. "Vivian. Last night you..." Before he could finish, Jason stopped him and told him to get ready quickly. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Throughout the whole wedding, my eyes always unconsciously followed Leo. I knew that after the wedding, I should have no more interactions with him. When Yvonne threw the bouquet, she gave me a bright smile and threw it straight into my arms. "Wish my best friend can find her own happiness soon." Everyone laughed kindly. Holding the bouquet, I found that Leo was also looking at me, as if he wanted to say something but held back. After the wedding, I was about to go home when a black Porsche Panamera stopped in front of me. Leo got out of the car. "Vivian. Get in the car. Let's talk." I took a step back. "No need. My family's driver is on the way." Leo frowned, his eyes complex. "Why did you cancel the engagement? Why didn't you answer my call last night?" I chose a gentle way to say it. I think one should find a truly loving partner to get married. As for not answering the call, it's because I'm used to muting my phone before going to bed. "I'm sorry." Leo slightly bent down, his tall figure enveloping me. He said word by word, "You don't love me?" I met his gaze, and once again, a bitter ripple rose in my heart. In my previous life, I loved him wholeheartedly. But now I no longer have such hopes. Since I can't have him, it's better to let go. I just thought that Leo wouldn't care. I was just the fiancé he had met a few times. Logically speaking, even if the engagement was cancelled, he shouldn't care. "Then who do you love?" Leo asked again, and his gaze seemed tangible, as if he wanted to see through my heart. I had never seen him like this. In my previous life, he always looked calm and composed in front of me. Elegant and gentlemanly. But not very close. "Vivian." His deep voice called my name, making me even more uneasy. Fortunately, having fulfilled my desire, at this time, the family's driver had driven the car over. I said goodbye in a hurry and got into the car. Even after the car drove away, I could still see Leo standing there, motionless. Ding. My phone received a message from Leo. "Vivian. I'll make you willingly marry me." I suspected that I was seeing things. The Leo who clearly loved Yvonne must be crazy to send me such a message. Right? I didn't take Leo's words to heart. I guessed that perhaps a prodigy like him couldn't accept that a woman would take the initiative to cancel the engagement with him. So it aroused his competitive spirit. Life returned to normal, and I threw myself back into the busy orchestra rehearsals, occasionally watching the TV dramas starring Yvonne. An A-list actress marrying into a wealthy family, with a grand wedding and a gathering of celebrities, was on the hot search, and people talked about it with relish for half a month. Anyway, seeing that my best friend had successfully married her beloved in this life, I was genuinely happy for her. There was a performance in the orchestra a week later. So recently I had been soaking in the rehearsal room, practicing the cello like crazy. The orchestra I was in was very famous, and the conductor, Mr. Lin, was notoriously strict. Whoever made a mistake would be severely criticized without mercy. We all secretly called him Mr. Lin the Skin Flayer, behind his back, but it was good this way. The busy rehearsals filled my time, leaving me no time to think about Leo. A week passed in a flash. On the day of the performance, I wore a long dark blue dress and carried my cello to the theater. When I got out of the car, I saw a familiar Porsche Panamera out of the corner of my eye. I couldn't help but wonder, was Leo here too? In my previous life, during the 5 years of my marriage to him, I would always reserve a front row ticket for him whenever the orchestra had a performance. But every time that seat was empty. He never came to watch once. Previously, my colleagues in the orchestra would joke and ask me who that seat was for. I was too embarrassed to say it was for my husband, so I just said it was for a good friend. But the friend was too busy to come and listen every time. Today, during the performance, I subconsciously looked at that seat, and there was actually someone sitting there. It was Leo. My emotions were instantly complex. In my past life, I couldn't wait for the person who would come to listen to my performance. In this life, I no longer needed him. Yet he showed up gracefully. Due to being distracted, I almost played the wrong piece. Noticing the sharp glance from conductor Lin, I felt a chill in my heart and immediately pushed Leo to the back of my mind, focusing on the sheet music. Fortunately, the normal performance was successfully completed, and I took a bow with everyone. Conductor Lin came over and looked at me seriously. "Vivian, what's wrong with you today? Your state is really bad. If this happens again next time, I'll consider adjusting the list." I immediately apologized. "I'm sorry. I'll adjust myself and make sure this never happens again." Perhaps seeing my good attitude of admitting my mistake, Conductor Lin didn't criticize me much and waved me off. I carried my cello on my back and walked out of the theater, unexpectedly running into Leo. "Vivian, today's performance was great." I forced a bitter smile. He couldn't tell whether my performance was good or bad anyway. Indeed, he had never been interested in such things before. I didn't say much, just nodded and thanked him, then planned to leave. But he chased after me and took the cello on my back. He said calmly, "I'll take you back." "No need. I have a driver." "What? Are you afraid of me?" Leo didn't give me a chance to hesitate. He directly put my cello in the back seat of his car, so I had to get in the passenger seat. In the car, I kept looking out of the window in silence. I could feel Leo looking at me from time to time, but I ignored him. Leo suddenly said, "What I said before was true." I was stunned, and then remembered what he said about wanting me to marry him willingly. I just felt it was ridiculous and absurd. He clearly didn't love me, yet he wanted me to be like a moth flying into the fire. How hateful. "I can't do it. Find someone else," I said, self-deprecating lie. "With your status as Leo, you can have any kind of marriage partner you want. Why must it be me?" But Leo said, "What about you? I remember when we met before. You were clearly satisfied with me." I took a deep breath. I didn't understand before, but now I know that a substitute is always just a substitute. Leo showed a subtle expression. He sized me up for a while before saying unhurriedly, "Vivian, who do you think I see you as?" I closed my mouth tightly, not wanting to make a fool of myself. One was my best friend, and the other was the man I loved. I could be indifferent to Yvonne, but I couldn't help resenting Leo, who had someone else in his heart. The next moment, Leo's words exploded like thunder. "I regret it. When I saw you covered in blood and without breath, I already regretted it." I turned my head stiffly, looking at him in disbelief. Could it be that besides me, Leo was also reborn? My mind was in chaos. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but didn't know where to start. The car stopped near my home. Leo reached out and held my wrist. If I'm not wrong, you should have been reborn just like me, right? His complex gaze enveloped me. The space in the car was small, and the cold fragrance on his body became more distinct. I know I didn't do well before and hurt your heart. Maybe God took pity on me. After losing you, He gave me the chance to meet you again. His voice was as deep as mellow wine. The skin on my wrist was surrounded by the warmth of his palm, making me at a loss. Vivian, I'll prove it to you. I nervously pulled my wrist back from his hand and tried to calm my breathing. You don't have to do this. I've decided to let go. So please don't come and disrupt my heart casually anymore. I pushed the door open and got out of the car, then hurried home with my cello on my back. My mother was sitting in the living room watching TV. She was a little surprised when she saw me. Dear, why do you look so flustered? Was today's performance not going well? I forced a smile. David, I wasn't in a good state. Then my precious daughter must be too tired recently. I stewed tremella and lotus seed soup. Come and have a taste. A bowl of warm sweet soup was stuffed into my hand, looking at my mother's loving eyes. I obediently drank the loving work she had carefully stewed. Love can easily hurt me, but family affection always warms me. I originally thought that as long as I kept my distance from Leo, he would lose interest. But when he showed up in the front row of every concert, I found that he was more patient than I had imagined. And not only did he come to watch the performance, but he also ordered flower bouquets to be sent backstage every time. They were my favorite piece of Schilleriana. After sending them so many times, my colleagues all knew that I had an unnamed admirer. Wow! Another big bouquet of flowers. Vivian, Hedinen, do you know who this infatuated person is? It's so strange. He even sends flowers. But there's not even a greeting card. How can you chase someone like this? I smiled but didn't say anything. Even without a signature, I knew it was Leo who sent them. Because besides Yvonne, I had only told Leo that I liked this kind of flower. And if Yvonne sent me flowers, she would come to me with the bouquet in her arms. I remembered my first wedding anniversary in my past life. Leo gave me a bouquet of roses. Holding the roses, I murmured, although roses are also very beautiful, my favorite is piece of Schilleriana. At that time, Leo smiled faintly and said he would buy it for me on the next anniversary. But the second time, it was still a bunch of delicate and charming roses. Later, I found out that he had entrusted his secretary to order the flowers, and he didn't have the time to buy them for me in person. So I no longer mentioned my beloved flower, just smiled gently when I received the roses. The one who sent the flowers was careless, and the one who received them shouldn't expect too much. I carried the flower bouquet to the gate. As expected, I saw the familiar Porsche Panamera again. And Leo was leaning against the car door, leisurely and eye-catching. Passing girls kept looking back at him. Seeing me come out, Leo smiled at me. I'll take you back. I felt a bit of a headache. He came more frequently than my family's driver. Even if I refused him again and again, he would still wait at the gate the next time. Leo, I've said no need to send me back. And there's no need to send me flowers either. Just consider it a gift from a fan. His manner was so leisurely that it made me seem petty. Come on. Today Jason invited me to dinner. And my sister-in-law is also there. Leo opened the door of the passenger seat, being certain that I would get in his car. When we arrived at the restaurant's private room, Yvonne greeted me with a big smile and pulled me to sit down. Vivian, I've been waiting for you for a long time. She winked at me playfully and whispered in my ear. Although you and Leo canceled the engagement, I can see that he's been very attentive to you recently. He even chased you to your concert. I found it a bit funny. So this is the reason why you asked me to a dinner. But only let Leo pass the message to me? Yvonne said cheekily. Of course. We always have to give someone a chance to show their attentiveness. After that, she looked at me suspiciously. Although you said before that there was someone else in his heart, I don't think so now. I was momentarily speechless. I couldn't say that the person in Leo's heart was her. So I could only change the subject. What are the signature dishes here? Sure enough, Yvonne focused on the dishes and recommended the signature dishes here to me. I looked up at Leo's family brothers. They were chatting about business topics that I couldn't understand. Jason was as energetic as ever, while Leo was mature and reserved. They were clearly brothers. But one was active and the other was quiet. Completely different. I remembered that in my past life, Yvonne and Jason had always had a good relationship. Although the gossiped accolades and marketing accounts occasionally hyped up her scandal, it didn't affect the relationship between the couple at all. This was probably why Leo had always loved so secretly. One was his beloved, and the other was his brother. And they had a deep relationship. There was no room for him to intervene. Although he now kept saying that he regretted it and wanted to pursue me again, I still remained vigilant in my heart. He had loved Yvonne for so many years. How could he suddenly realize that he had fallen in love with me, just because he saw me stabbed to death? The meal didn't taste good. Fortunately, having fulfilled my sigh, Yvonne was there to crack jokes and make me happy. After dinner, Yvonne asked Leo to send me back. She gave me a mischievous smile and left with Jason, arm in arm. Under the night, I felt a bit uncomfortable under Leo's gaze. His eyes were too deep and too complex. Like a vast sea. Underneath were surging waves that could drag me into the unknown bottom of the sea at any time. He suddenly asked me, "Did you go to Binchang when you were a child?" I was taken aback and searched through my dusty memories for old recollections. Yes. I remember it was probably after I graduated from primary school. I went to visit relatives with my family. Why do you ask? Leo seemed to be thinking about something, showing a nostalgic look. I never thought that the naughty kid back then would grow up to be you now. I looked at him blankly, not understanding what was going on. He smiled gently. Don't you remember? Who was it who climbed a tree to pick a coconut, got scared and cried halfway up, and even got a cut on their lower back when they fell? I was shocked. How do you know? I was very naughty when I was a child. Usually, I was supervised by my parents at home, either practicing the piano or going to tutoring classes all day. Finally, having fulfilled me. When I graduated from primary school and went back to my hometown, I was like a bird out of a cage, running wild everywhere. But how could Leo, a young master from the capital, know about my old stories of running wild in my hometown? Leo narrowed his eyes and suddenly flicked my forehead. Looking at my pained expression, he said lightly, "You used to follow me around all day, calling me brother. Now you've forgotten all about it?" Brother? Leo? I tried hard to recall for a long time before remembering that there was a tall and thin teenager among the group of people I played with back then. Because he was the oldest, I pestered him to call him brother, and asked him to play with me. But that teenager looked tanned and was just an ordinary Binchang boy. It was hard to connect him with the elegant Leo in front of me. I hesitated and called him. "Could you be Brother Chicken Wing?" Leo laughed. "You can't remember anything else. But you remember my old nickname. Huh?" I felt a bit embarrassed. At that time, a group of children called him Chicken Wing. And I thought it was fun. So I followed suit. I didn't even know his real name. "But how were you in Binchang?" "My grandmother is from Binchang. At that time, it was summer vacation. And like you, I was going back to visit relatives." Speaking of this, Leo's eyes deepened. You actually lied to me back then. When I asked you what your name was. What did you say?" I didn't dare to meet his gaze at all. At that time, I thought my name didn't sound good. So I lied to him that my name was Yvonne. He let out a soft sigh. "You disliked the scar on your lower back. Thought it was ugly. And said you wanted to tattoo a rose on it when you grew up. Remember?" I did say that. But when I became an adult, I had scar repair surgery. The scar turned into a light pink color. And there was no need to cover it with a tattoo anymore. In a flash of inspiration, I suddenly remembered the enchanting rose to Donovan's lower back. It was her 18-year-old gift to herself. A bold guess rose in my heart. Could it be that he thought Yvonne was the girl from back then just because of that rose tattoo? Leo took 2 steps closer. And I could smell the faint cold fragrance coming from his clothes. "Vivian, you're such a sly one." The low murmur rang in my ears. And the warm breath blew on my earlobe, bringing a slight tingling sensation. My heart skipped a beat. And I was speechless. That night, I had a dream. I dreamt that I was back at the age of 12. The summer in Benhai City is always sunny. The sky is as blue as if it were washed. And I was standing under a coconut tree facing the wind, staring eagerly at the coconuts. Someone patted me on the shoulder. I turned around and saw a tall and thin 17-year-old boy. The sun had tanned him, but his eyes were astonishingly bright. I looked closely at his face and noticed that his facial features were very similar to Leo's 15 years later. The 17-year-old Leo smiled and said, "Little liar. Why didn't you tell me your real name?" I put my hands behind my back and lowered my eyes, staring at my toes. I guessed that at 12 years old, I must have looked like a silly little rascal. It took me a long time to twist and turn before I finally said my name. Leo nodded after hearing it. "I'll remember. I'll never lose you again." The next moment, the scene changed. I saw Yvonne holding me with tears all over her face, crying and shouting my name. And Leo, who rushed over in a hurry, had a pale face and looked at me in disbelief. He was so embarrassed for the first time, completely losing his usual calm. "Vivian? Wake up." He came over, hesitantly held my limp hand, but was pushed away by the medical staff. Then full I, covered in blood, was taken away by the ambulance. When we arrived at the hospital, the doctor announced that I was dead. My parents' hair turned white overnight, and Yvonne even fainted from crying several times. Only Leo took care of my funeral arrangements with a pale face throughout the process. When arranging my body, he suddenly stared fixedly at the light pink scar on my lower back, as if struck by lightning. Seeing this, Yvonne explained in a low voice that I fell from a tree when I was a child and got the scar. But I had a scar repair surgery after becoming an adult. Leo only asked Yvonne one question: "Have you ever been to Benhai City?" Yvonne shook her head. "No. Only Vivian has been there. My hometown is right here in the capital." Leo didn't say anything more, just quietly stared at my face as if I were asleep. He looked so extremely sad that he couldn't shed tears. I subconsciously wanted to step forward and say something, but my hand passed through his body. When I woke up again, I touched my face with my hand, and it was full of wet tears. So, Leo would be sad when I died. Recently, Leo hasn't come to watch my performances anymore, but he still sends spotted Falanapizaps every time. During the break, I took a look at Leo's WeChat moments and saw that his status was located on the west coast of the United States. He was probably on a business trip there. Suddenly, heading to Seldme, I received a message from him, which was a photo of a sunny beach. Looking at this photo, I suddenly thought of Benhai City back then. The only difference was that there were coconut trees everywhere in Benhai City. And a message popped up: "The beach here is very beautiful. When you're on vacation, I'll take you here to play." I was still thinking about how to reply when the trombonist passed by, saw the conversation interface, and immediately became gossipy. "Vivian, did you get a boyfriend? Is it the mysterious admirer who sends you flowers?" My face flushed, and I shook my head repeatedly. "He's not my boyfriend." The other person grinned. Oh, don't be shy. If he's not now, he will be in the future." Two violinists next to us also laughed and started teasing me. I was a bit helpless. Everyone in the orchestra was guessing who the mysterious flower sender was, and many people even bet on how long it would take for me to accept his pursuit. Fortunately, at this time, Conductor Lin walked in. Under the pressure of Conductor Lin's gaze, everyone shut up and then started a new round of rehearsal. After the rehearsal, I stared blankly at Leo's chat box. After getting married to Leo back then, whenever he went on a business trip, he would just tell me casually and never share anything extra with me. Now that the misunderstandings have been cleared up, Leo's pursuit has become more and more open and above board. He will also report his whereabouts to me from time to time and share his life with me. To be honest, this feeling is very novel. The 5 years of being married to him before couldn't compare to the 5 months of getting along with him now. Back then, he was gentlemanly and polite, and it seemed that nothing could leave a mark on his heart. Except for that time when he was drunk, I had never seen him lose his composure. So now, Seeing his gentle and patient side makes me feel dazed. So this is how he looks when he likes someone and pursues someone. But I can't help but think, couldn't the 5 years of living together day and night compare to the 2 months of getting along when we were young? I tried my best to be good to him in the marriage. Didn't he soften his heart for me even for a moment? Thinking of this, I was actually jealous of my 12-year-old self. After struggling for a while, I laughed at myself for being so anxious and preoccupied. This really doesn't seem like me. A week later, I saw Leo again at the entrance of the theater. Come on. I'll take you to dinner. He took me to a seaside restaurant. From our seats, we could overlook the calm sea. There was a violinist in the restaurant playing. I couldn't help asking, "What's the special occasion today?" Leo smiled softly. "Wedding anniversary." I was stunned. And then I realized that today was the wedding anniversary of me and him in my previous life. I found it both funny and annoying. "What are you doing?" "We're just friends now." Clearly. Leo looked at me deeply. "I also said that I'm going to pursue you." I asked him back. "Is it because I'm that little girl from back then?" Actually, have you fulfilled my obsession? I still held a grudge in my heart. Grudging about those 5 years when I gave my all but got no warmth or love in return. Leo shook his head. "It's not just that. When I saw you covered in blood in front of me, I knew what it meant to be heartbroken. I once thought that I didn't love you. And marrying you was just to meet the elders' requirement that I should start a family. But when I really thought I'd lost you, I realized how wrong I was. I was too slow-witted. So even though you were right by my side, I ignored your kindness and pretended not to see your feelings. No one will light a lamp and wait for me when I come back late at night anymore. No one will massage my scalp when I'm tired. Or care about my well-being day in and day out for years. Vivian, I'm sorry for making you wait for me for so many years." I suddenly lowered my head, and tears dropped onto the back of my hand. Leo held my hand and sighed gently. "Don't cry. It's my fault. When I was on vacation, Leo originally wanted to take me to the West Coast. But I wanted to go back to Benachai City. Returning to my hometown after more than 10 years. Benachai City seemed almost the same as in my memory. There was still the abundant and bright sunshine. And under the clear blue sky were the quiet sea and the swaying coconut groves. Leo held my hand and walked on the beach. The soft whites and playfully seeped between my toes. A group of laughing children passed by us. Leo nudged me with his elbow. Look. Doesn't that little girl with braids look like you back then?" I glanced at the girl and couldn't help laughing. Nonsense. I wasn't that short back then. And I pointed at a boy with a suntan face. "If you ask me, this boy looks a lot like you in the past." Leo frowned. "What kind of eyes do you have?" "I'm much more handsome than him." Seeing his depressed expression, I laughed so hard that my body shook. Passing by an old woman selling frozen young coconuts, Leo stopped, took out money and bought 2. He inserted straws and handed one to me. I took a big gulp. The familiar taste of coconut water burst on the tip of my tongue. Sweet and refreshing. I squinted my eyes comfortably and heard the old woman say with a smile, "You two make a lovely couple." Leo beamed. "Granny, you have a good eye." I almost choked on the coconut water. It was really rare to see Leo showing off like this. Since that dinner, I agreed to Leo's pursuit. And the two of us officially started dating. Actually, Leo proposed marriage. But I didn't agree immediately. Marriage is a lifetime thing. Instead of living together in name only in the future, it's better to start with dating. If we're compatible, we'll continue. If not, we'll part ways. Leo didn't force me. Instead, he gently kissed my forehead. "It's okay. I know you don't have confidence. But I'll prove it to you." And at this moment, looking at Leo beside me, smiling with his eyes curved, I felt that my choice was right. After all, in my previous life, I never experienced the sweetness of love. Let him make it up to me in this life. After strolling around and getting tired, I sat on the beach to rest. But Leo pulled me to lie down. With the shade of the tree beside us and the sea breeze blowing gently, I felt so comfortable that I almost fell asleep. In a daze, I felt myself being hugged into a warm and broad embrace. and I could smell the familiar faint cold fragrance at the tip of my nose. I buried my head in his chest and was reluctant to leave for a moment. I couldn't remember when was the last time I relaxed and relied on him like this. His big hand gently patted my back, as if coaxing a child to sleep, and I actually fell asleep in a daze. I don't know how long it had passed. I rubbed my eyes and woke up, only to be shocked to find that it was getting dark. When I looked up, there were stars all over the sky. "Why didn't you wake me up? How long did I sleep?" I mumbled and complained. Stretching oneself with a big yawn seeing you sleeping so soundly. "How could I bear to wake you up?" Leo moved his numb arm, his tone doting. I coughed softly. Although we had been in a relationship for 2 months, I still wasn't quite used to this affectionate Leo. He pulled me up from the beach. "Come on, Vivian. I guess you're starving now. I'll take you to have something delicious." I let him pull me up and deliberately played tricks. "My feet are numb. I can't walk." He turned around and looked at me. The corner of his mouth curled up. And then he squatted down in front of me. "Get on my back. I'll carry you." I laughed and climbed on his back. He held me steadily and walked forward step by step. I haven't been carried by anyone since I grew up. Lying on Leo's back, with my hands around his neck, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. "Leo, Avaleo. Am I heavy?" "Don't worry. With your weight, I can carry you until we're ready." He adjusted my position on his back and laughed in a low voice. "When you can't walk anymore, I can still carry you to see the scenery." I was amused by him. Suddenly, I thought this was not bad. Even if we grow old, my lover will still be by my side. Once I couldn't wait for the person I loved. Now he's right beside me. And I have a lifetime to see his love clearly. The end of the full text.